Brandon, obviously we're going to talk about a few things tonight, but cartel bounties on ICE agent heads. When I saw that headline, I thought to myself, that seems like a bridge too far for people who've generally not crossed that line. Am I naive?
Okay, so my take on this is complex.
Okay.
Okay, so first off, very supportive of ICE going into Chicago. Um, I'm not coming from that place at all. That said, I think that this is a bit of a stretch. What I smell, what my gut tells me, for a number of reasons, which we can get into, is that some very low level informant um, made this claim, whether it be an FBI or a DEA or a who knows informant, right? Human source made this claim. It made it into an intel report, and somebody walked it up the chain to the top of DHS and said, "Hey, this kind of justifies what we're doing," and DHS put it out there. I don't think for one second that the cartels, right, like the way the wording is without being specific of the criminal group or
Mm-hmm.
anything, I do not believe that this is true. It could be true, but I don't think it's true.
That's it. That's why I wanted you to come on. It just reeked to me of something that would escalate things at a time where I'm assuming they've kind of got their heads down as much as possible, right?
Correct. That is exactly true. Again, always be, there's a time and a place to say the cartels,
Uh,
uh, or to say the cartel if you're talking about, if you're in a conversation about a specific cartel, and I say, well, the cartel did this, that's appropriate. But in general, when someone says the cartels or the cartel in Mexico, like the rest of what they say is probably not informed, right?
mm-hmm.
And these are, we're talking about thousands of disparate groups with different interests and different personalities. We're talking about the major cartels, same thing as far as different personalities, and there is not a single one that would benefit from this right now. Now, is it true that some gang in Chicago Chicago has a lot of politicized gangs. Anyone who goes back and looks through the 60s and 70s and 80s with a lot of street gangs that were started as political movements or that got politicized and were political um, and criminal, right? There's a fine line between revolutionary and thug, right? A fine line between a revolutionary and an organized criminal, right? Because they do a lot of the same things, and for funding, and for they operate outside of a system, right? So there's a lot of similarities, but it's very possible that there are gangs in New York who are trying to hurt I mean, in Chicago who are trying to hurt ICE agents. But to say that that is somehow related to cartels, I think that's a stretch. And I think that there was an intel report probably that said this, where a source made this comment. Um, Probably another agent of whichever agency asked another source, and that source is like, "Yeah, I heard that too. Can I get my $50 now?" You know what I mean? And I think that's what this is.
Okay. Again, we're speaking with Cartel Chronicles, Breitbart's Brandon Darby. Brandon, well, that, of course, at least in my mind, that's how my sick mind works, begs the question, why does it go clear to DHS? Why does it go clear to Christy Nome and she runs to the news with it? That tells me she wants that information out there because surely she would have known, or it would have gotten her, that this is a little flimsy. Why would she want that out there?
Well, I think that they're under a lot of pressure right now, especially related to Chicago. I think there's a lot of political pressure, and I think they're trying to give as much ammo to their supporters as they can, right? And to show the type of threats that are out there. I mean, you're a public person, and I guess I am too. Um, People say comments to me all the time online. They reply like, "Your time's gonna come and you're gonna get it." And I mean, I get death threats all the time, right? Um, do I, does it change anything that I'm doing? No. Now, the average person gets a death threat or has somebody say something bad about them online and they're all freaked out over it, right? Because they're not accustomed to that, right? So do I believe that a source said this? Yes. Do I think that there's a lot of political benefit in pointing out that a source said this? Yes. Do I think that it should have? Do I think if it were in any other time and not during this controversial time in Chicago with so many people politically organizing around it, do I think that that report would have made it to the intel community as a whole, much less been put out to the public by DHS? No, I do not.
Brandon, talk to me about Canada. This is something I talked to somebody about yesterday, something that people don't think about a lot when they think about cartel activity, human trafficking, drug trafficking. But to hear I mean, tribal nations up there along the border, Canada's a problem, is it?
Yes. But to be fair, tribal nations along the U.S. border with Mexico are also a problem. Okay. So if any of your listeners were to go to Arizona, right, and they would in the middle of Arizona, there's this gigantic uh, reservation on the border called the Tohono O'odham Reservation, right? Okay, so when I'm on the border in remote areas along the actual U.S.-Mexico border, I see certain things. It's called sign, right? So I can tell where people have been crossing. I can look and see. I can see everything from footprints. Typically, what I see are black gallon bottles, right? Black plastic gallon bottles, which are the water bottles that these criminal groups use. Typically, I find little carpet. They're called magic slippers, magic shoes, right? And what they do is they put these uh, they pull these carpet shoes over their shoes, and it makes much less of a signature on the sand or the gravel. You don't see a footprint, right? You don't see the footprint, and that's what they use. And so I see those all along the border. There's a group called Los Salazar that they use them. It used to be a group called Los Mimos. They use them. Well, now it's really just all Los Salazar. But Los Salazar, that's what their drug smugglers use, right? They use when the drug smugglers cross the border. They have all this, so you can look right across the border. You can see a staging area like under a tree. You'll see all kinds of signs. Then you see that a little bit on the U.S. side of the border. Well, when you go to the Tohono O'odham Reservation and you go all the way from the border and you go all the way around Tohono O'odham, you go all the way up to Tucson, all the way up to Casa Grande, which is getting close to Phoenix, and then you go immediately west, right? So now you're going parallel with the border, 40 to 60 miles from the border, okay? When you get to the north side of the Tohono O'odham Reservation, guess what I see there? The
Oh,
same sign, right, from the drug smugglers. So what does that tell you? It tells you that the drug smugglers are utilizing the Native American reservation to cross and get drugs to Phoenix. That's what it tells you. So yes, these are massive problems. You got to consider it like on these reservations, you have extreme poverty, right? So you have a lot of the same economic situations and societal situations that Mexico deals with, right? So just as it's easy to corrupt officials in Mexico, it's easy to corrupt officials on a Native American reservation in general, right? If they're impoverished. Um, so yes, absolutely, these are problems. This is a problem, and not to get into the detailed historical whatever, but yes, this is a in the dealing with drugs and smugglers, the reservations along the borders are major problems. Even not along the border, there can be problems, right, with flights and people flying things in, and it not being something that there's a lot of U.S. government oversight of. Major problems.
that's kind of what I figured. Brandon, thank you for educating us again tonight. I appreciate you as always. Brandon Darby, go read his stuff wherever you can. Daggone it. I knew it was a problem. I knew those reservations were a problem, Chris. I had my reservations about what? What?